There's times you work for the business and there's times that the business works for you. I needed to be given permission to let go a little bit. You can't be in a C-level position and not feel some pressure. If you do, I might suggest you're actually not a great C-level executive because you are the tip of the spear. It's your responsibility. I'm going to go to a Dave Schneider trademark, tagline, which is build brand, drive demand. I feel a responsibility to ensure that we are setting the company up for long-term success, and specifically maybe through a marketing lens, if you will, that we're setting our brands up for long-term success, that I'm building on the legacy that has been handed to me.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fearful Giants, the podcast that's getting loud about something most leaders never talk about out loud, their fear. I'm Clay Stelzer, executive coach and founder of the coaching company 1560. And every week I sit down with a founder, a CEO, or executive leader to talk about the stuff they're not typically posting about or talking about on LinkedIn. And today we have the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend, Dave Schneider is with us. And I know he's shaking his head right now. I'm so excited to have Dave here. Dave is the chief marketing officer of one of my favorite brands, my favorite boots in the world, the iconic American brand, Red Wing Shoe Company, Red Wing Boots. And Dave leads the global marketing practice. Before Red Wing, Dave held senior roles at agencies, marketing firms, working for major brands, including MillerCoors, Dell, State Farm, Lowe's, McDonald's, AT&T, et cetera, et cetera. This is not Dave's first rodeo. Dave's been around. He understands marketing, and he's a really great guy. I got to work with Dave a number of years ago, so I'm really excited to have him here. Hello, Dave.
Hi there. Good to see you, Clay, as always.
It's all my pleasure, Dave. We get to have some fun today. We get to talk about your psyche, where I'm going to dive deep into your soul to really get at the essence of who this Dave guy is. How's that sound?
Ouch.
I do want to just dive in, though. We caught up recently, and I loved our conversation. And I loved it because you were talking about how much love you have for Red Wing, this company that you work for. And it's so, I don't want to say refreshing to hear that, but I just really love that. I love it when people love what they're doing and they love doing it for the particular company they're doing it for. So I wanted to start there. I wanted to talk about why it is that you love Red Wing so much. Maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's awesome to reconnect with you. It has been more than a beat or two since we worked together, but big Clay fan and love to see kind of where you've taken your own career in the last, 10 years or so since we worked together. So congrats to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Red Wing Shoe Company, I love this company. I love what we're doing. I love the people. I love the product. I love this role. I love everything about it. If I try and synthesize it down maybe into why, there's probably my boss right now would be giving me grief because there's always three things with Dave. So I've got three things. There's probably three reasons why. I think, first of all, it'd be a mistake to not just mention the people up front. And the people is everything from our CEO, Allison, to our leadership team, of which I'm proud to be a part of that cohort, if you will, down to my direct report team, so my marketing leadership team, to the rest of the marketing team, to the cross-functional teams. All of it, honestly, the people, I know it's a cliche, but there's some awesome people at Red Wing Shoe Company. And, one of our values or one of our mission is that we seek to make a difference in people's lives. And I think we do that. So it's the people first and foremost. The second of all, I think that just, it's hard not to fall in love with our brand and our product. Our brand is a global brand. We say oftentimes we're bigger than you might think we are, so to speak, because we've got quite a bit of cachet. We've got quite a following. We've got a bit of a paparazzi, entertainment kind of cult following at times. And so there's kind of the brand side of it. There's also the product side of it. The product is awesome. It is awesome to work for a product that you love personally, if you will. I've got, I don't know, 75 pair, something like that, probably in my garage. My father made a whole shelving system for the product years ago when we built our house. So there's that piece of it. And then the third piece of it, which is probably, a little bit more actionable, which is I love the fact that this company is big enough that it has resources and people and meaty strategic challenges, but yet it's small enough that you feel like you can really make an impact. And you're not just a cog in the wheel, so to speak. And so there's that kind of that right size company for me personally. It's just, I love the bigness of it and kind of the global nature. And we've got offices across the globe, and I've had a chance to travel, big parts of the world, so to speak, with Red Wing. But at the same time, we're small enough where the team and my people and the work we actually produce, actually, you can see that it is making a difference in the business. And that's really satisfying to actually see that what you're doing is actually making an impact. So those three reasons. I think it's about the people, I think it's about the brand and the product, and I think it's about the impact.
Well, that makes sense. Those are three pretty important things. I want to talk quickly about the people, and I want to talk about Allison here in a minute. You did mention, I know it can be a cliche talking about our people, but I actually do believe you that, yeah, no, our people are fabulous. You've worked with a lot of companies. I've worked with a lot of companies. What's the magic? Why are the people at Red Wing as amazing as they are? Like, is it, yeah, I'd love for you just, how did that happen? How does Red Wing have the people that make this experience so brilliant for you?
Yeah, I think for part of it, you got to have a little bit of context here. Is we're a 120-year-old company. And so we firmly believe that we stand on the shoulders that come before us. And so, right, literally from the moment I started this company, I mean, there is a sensitivity to those that have been before us, and we reap the benefits as some of the decisions that were made prior to us coming here. And we have enormous respect around kind of who those people were and what they did. I'll use a real world example. When I started this company, like I actually had overlap with my predecessor by several weeks. And I was in contact with him for many years after I left the company. We'd get together for breakfast on occasion. And, if I look at any of our positions, that's very true across the board. So there was a massive, overlap on our CEO. There was our general counsel just recently left, and she had an overlap probably by about 3 months with her kind of incoming predecessor. So I think there is a sensitivity that there's a big, massive baton pass that's in this company. And so we all want to do good work. We all stand on the shoulders of those that come before us. We're sensitive to the work that we're doing. And so I think that's an important characteristic is we understand that we're part of a larger narrative that's taking place. I think the other piece is that we're both kind and smart, I would say. And so there is a kindness that permeates the company, an element of positive intent. People want to do some of their best work there, so to speak. And there's kindness as well. And so we have the opportunity to kind of balance that equilibrium between the need to be kind to the humans and kind to the individuals, but also at the same time, there's a smartness, there's an adeptness, there's a real level of complicatedness behind our business. And so we've got really good people that can help solve some of those meaty problems. One of the guys on my team said it very well recently. He's like, I want to be kind to the people and hard on the work. And I think that's probably a really good way to sum it up. So,
Yeah. Again, amazing. I mean, all those things, like who doesn't want to work for a company like that? But I also know that that doesn't happen by accident. Like, what's in the water? What are you doing? You have to be doing something that's leading to that. I work with lots of companies that aspire to the things you're talking about. But your company, like this, baton pass, there's just some general understanding that we're here for a 120-year-old company and we're going to be kind and we're going to transition effectively. That doesn't happen by accident. It really doesn't. At least I don't believe it does. So, what are you all doing to ensure that this company today, not 120 years ago, but today is living and feeling the way that you're just describing the company to be?
yeah, I mean, it starts at the very top. And so Allison Gettings is our CEO. And I know we're going to probably talk a little bit more about her, but, and she's my boss, our CEO. She's fourth generation. And so, right from the very top of the organization, there is a baton pass that's happening. And so she's CEO now. She's been in the chair, whatever, 3, 4 years. Our former CEO was not family. Mark Erdahl, who's the guy who hired me, the CEO before that was not family, but the CEO before that was family. And so there's always kind of this meandering of kind of the Sweezy family as being, the leaders of this company. And I know that Allison, in her heart of hearts, she would say that she wants to ensure that she's leaving this company for the next generation, for her kids. And so that kind of value, if you will, does permeate the culture. And so then it kind of just, it succeeds, in multiple levers beneath it, if you will. I think there's also an element. So that's one element. I think there's a second element, which is there are a lot of legacy employees in this company that have been here a long time. And so the right combination of new people, new ideas, external presence, et cetera, but also the element of people who've been there and done that and understand how the culture works and what doesn't work. I think
Yeah.
there's that also balance that takes place there. So I think it starts at the top, but there's also an element of kind of the integration of new thinking and new ideas, coupled with kind of the idea that there are people that have been there and done that. So
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I have a hypothesis too that it's just occurring to me. Like I wasn't bullshitting you. I love my Red Wing boots. Every time I put them on, it's like putting on pajamas. Like they feel great. They're rugged. They're comfortable. They're everything. They look really cool. They feel like me. And I'm imagining if everyone's running around your office wearing Red Wings, and I'm imagining most of them
They
are,
are. Yeah, they
yeah.
are.
Like there's something that is connecting everyone. If you go work for some company and you have no relationship with the product, there is no connective tissue other than, I don't know, some value or some mission statement that is presented top down or something. But if you're all wearing the shoes and you love the shoes, I imagine that really would make an impact. My hypothesis.
That's a great point. I mean, there's an element of pride, I would say, that permeates the culture as well. And so it's not atypical for a meeting to start and for people to, look over underneath the conference room table or whatever and see what somebody might be wearing today. And are you wearing the new collab? Are you wearing our new model that we've just, launched? Or, like, what are you wearing? And so that does generate, a bit of conversation at the beginning of a lot of dialogues and discussions and meetings. So there is absolutely an element of that. I think there's also an element too of when we go out and do our daily lives, our personal lives. I find great pride in people coming up and asking me about what I'm wearing. And many people obviously know I work for a Red Wing Shoe Company after all these years, but people are constantly kind of like, checking out what I'm wearing. And so there's an element of pride to be able to represent that as kind of an ambassador to this company, I would say too. So
Well, if you're looking for any massive influencers to support your brand,
right here, right here.
you've got at least 12 people listening to this podcast right now. So I just want to put that
including
out there.
including my mom and my brother. Yes,
Yeah, I mean, if you need a little bit more pride knowing that this guy's wearing Red Wings, could be good for your culture, could be good for the company. Anyway, we'll move on from that. We'll come back to that later, maybe. Okay, so what a cool company. You're proud about the product. You got amazing people, an amazing CEO. There's heritage there. When I talked with you, I don't know, a month or so ago, you told me that when you first came to Red Wing, you were thinking, yeah, maybe this will be a 3-year kind of gig. And now it's been 12 years. And you told me, I imagine I'll retire from this company. I mean, like, wow, how cool is that? To love the company so much that you imagine yourself ending your career. That's really, really cool. And so for me, I started thinking about, well, how is this different from other companies? So I'm really curious about what your relationship was like with work prior to Red Wing. What was your relationship like as a working person outside of Red Wing?
yeah. I mean, I think it's very fair to say that work is an important part of my identity, and that comes from my father for sure, and the values. And my father was a Type A driver, small business owner, and I don't want the word obsessed is probably the wrong word, but very involved with his business, the performance of his business. I mean, it had to perform in some respects. I mean, he was the owner, sole proprietor, so to speak. So there's also, I think, a responsibility there, if you will. And so that work ethic is definitely a part of who I am. I work very hard. I have always worked very hard. I commit a lot of hours. It's part of my identity. It's an important part of my identity. And yet, if I transition a little bit, like, so what's different now, maybe than it was in the past, is, I was late in life to get married, late in life to have children. I have a 10 and a 12-year-old at home. Today is the last day of school. So we're excited about the summer and all the summer will bring for us. But I'm probably a little bit more balanced now than I was before in terms of it's not just about work. There's an important other element to me, which is my children and my family and my wife. And I think that's also part of the culture at Red Wing. Part of the culture at Red Wing is to not be the 24/7 hands on the wheel 10 and 2 all the time working. And that's a little bit about what I came from, but also a little bit about who I was, I think, if I'm being honest. And so I flourished in that environment. And it took some adjustment to come here, to be very honest with you, because I'm like, how fast can we go? 10 and 2, pedal to the metal, let's go. And I'm not saying I still don't have an element of that because that's just my DNA. But I've also learned how to balance that out, maybe perhaps a little bit more critically, because I have other people relying on me, like my children. They'd like a father, and I want to be a great father and a husband, etc. So I think I've learned to create a little bit more forced. I hate the concept of work life balance. I think that's kind of BS. but I've learned how to integrate it perhaps a little bit better into my life in terms of how do I need to take the time to do what I need to do and at the same time ensure that we're driving the business forward. I want to quote if it's okay, and I don't know exactly where you're going with your questions here, but I'm going to quote. I know that we're going to talk about this quote at some point. So if I'm leapfrogging you, I'll do it now.
Go ahead
Part of it
and take me off course. Take me wherever you want to go.
we did have a bit of a conversation. And again, it comes down from the top. And I think the top is so important. And I have such respect for our CEO, for Allison. And my father was in the throes of his final days of his life. And we have an important meeting that happens every January. And so the type A driver in me felt an enormous amount of responsibility to be ready for that meeting, to be on point for that meeting, to show up for that meeting, to be on stage, et cetera, for that meeting. And she pulled me aside and I will never forget it. And she said, there's times you work for the business and there's times that the business works for you. And this is a time that the business needs to work for you, Dave. And so she encouraged me and wanted me to essentially, you know, take the time to be with my father and do what I need to do in those final days. And she's like, your team has got your back. And you know something? I needed to be given permission to let go a little bit. I needed that permission from her, that okay to not have to be there, 24/7, so to speak. So I think that's a little bit about me about who I am. I think it's also a little bit of representation of the culture that we've created and maybe how I've matured as an individual, I think is what that's kind of hopefully illustrating a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it says a ton about Allison. It says a ton about your company. I want to talk about values here. We'll talk about that in a minute. A lot of companies say here are 5 values and they put them on a plaque behind the reception desk or something. But for me, values aren't what you put on a plaque. If I'm walking through the halls, what am I actually experiencing? Those are your real values. What are you actually doing? And I love how I don't know if what she said was attached to a defined value for Red Wing, but I love how she was living the culture by sharing that with you or by saying, "Hey, you need to go take care of yourself." I think that is very cool and it's she didn't do that so you would be on a podcast one day and tell the world about that. She just did that because she believed in it. I believe that when we put our best forward as leaders like that, it pays dividends and it culture grows from that. So I just love that story and I'm glad you brought it up. And thanks a lot, Dave. I was going to bring it up in about 15 minutes and now my whole agenda is totally out the window.
Sorry, it connects back to who I am and, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I'm kidding. I love that you brought that up. Actually, I'd like to dive deeper into that though. Before she spoke up, what was the pressure you were experiencing?
As leaders, I think we always feel the pressure of, at least in my case, I'm going to go to a Dave Schneider trademark, tagline, which is build brand, drive demand. I feel a responsibility to ensure that we are setting the company up for long-term success that, and specifically maybe through a marketing lens, if you will, that we're setting our brands up for long-term success, that I'm building on the legacy that has been handed to me. It is an awesome responsibility and I don't take it lightly. I really, truly don't take it lightly. I do think about this a lot. And yet at the same time, I also feel an onus and a responsibility to ensure that we're doing what we need to do today to drive the business forward today. We're a privately held business and that affords us many opportunities that publicly traded exposed businesses don't have, which is we can play long ball. And we do. Well, we have a long-term mindset, a growth mindset over the long term as to what do we need to do. The red herring in that is that the short term doesn't matter. And that's an absolute red herring because we still, we want to make paychecks. If we'd like to make payroll, if we'd like to keep the business, moving and advancing forward, we have to have a real sensitivity to what does the business need today. And so you asked me what was on, what's on my mind, there to me, it's ensuring that we're setting ourselves up for long-term success while still ensuring that we are delivering performance today. And yes, that sounds marketing cliche-ish in some regards, but I would say it permeates our culture. We are not a short-term driven culture. And I've worked in enormous number of businesses where it is all about the quarterly earnings call. And it's all about what are we shoving in, the back room, so to speak, to ensure that we make the number. And then we're going to do it all again next quarter and the quarter after that. And it begins to be a bit of a nightmare, if I'm being honest with you. And so we're not that. We do have a responsibility. So we make decisions as a result of that. We make decisions, which maybe some people from an external perspective would look at us and say, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Why are they
Yeah.
investing there? Why are they making those types of decisions? But it's because we have, being a privately held company, it affords us opportunity that we don't have to play the game that everybody else is playing. So
If Allison wouldn't have reminded you of what's important and how the business works for you, at sometimes just as much as you work for the business. What do you think you would have done in
In
that
that
moment?
particular instance, you mean?
In that instance, yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm ashamed to say it, I don't know, Clay. I probably would have hopped on a plane and done what I need to do, gone to that business meeting, so to speak. And I would have figured out a way to ensure that I was literally not around, the day my father passed. I would have probably gone down there and done my gig and come back up. We're all wired certain ways, right? And so what I appreciate about Allison as our leader is I think she has enormous empathy. And when I say that, again, sounds like a cliche, but in some regards, for me, empathy is about understanding what the individual needs are, the individual requirements are. And so what I needed was for my boss, our CEO, to say, you know, deshackle, unleash. And that was enormously powerful. And that's not the only time that's happened, by the way. So we're talking about one specific instance when my father was passing away. I have another story that probably colors this as well. This is our former CEO, Mark Erdahl. And we were at another meeting. He was sitting next to me. I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was a 4 or 5 day meeting type thing because we do a couple of these a year, big sales meetings, et cetera. And we were sitting there having dinner at the executive table, all this kind of stuff, and we were making small talk about our lives a little bit. And I happened to mention to him that my daughter's first dance recital was like 2 days away, and that I was unfortunately going to miss it because I was at this sales meeting. And the way our sales meetings work is my role is much more pronounced early on. And then as the week goes on, my role becomes far less necessary, if I can put it like that, because the rest of the team is covering off on all the breakout sessions, et cetera. And so he looked at me, and I will forever remember it. And he said, "You need to get on the plane tomorrow and go home and be at your daughter's dance recital." And so that was, whatever. That dinner was Tuesday night. So I went home Wednesday, and her dance recital was on Thursday. And so there's many representations of that culture, if you will. And so I think we work hard. We have a desire to make things happen, but also I think we have enormous sensitivity around the people and the individuals that make up our culture. And as an employee, like, I need to be told that. I mean, I will tell you, I will drive myself to the very brink. Again, I've gotten better. But
Yeah.
it's part of who I am. I enjoy work. I flourish under it. I think I'm good at it, to be honest with you. And so there's an element of like, I enjoy this. This is part of my DNA. But I do need to be reminded that there are other things in life at times. So
Yeah.
I'm sure my wife will listen to this podcast and say something about this particular discussion. So
Yeah. Well, I think what makes you likely, well, I've worked with you before. I know how brilliant you are, but specifically or uniquely brilliant for this company, it seems like you have equal parts drive and passion for business results, but you really care about culture and values.
yeah, I do.
And that intersection is the murky middle, because that's what both of these stories was about. It's where drive meets values or meets work life balance, which I want to talk with you about. I'm really curious about your perspective on this. But one thing you said a minute ago, I'm curious about. You said, I needed permission from Allison. And I know you're not speaking literally like she offered you permission, to not go to the meeting, but that word, I'm guessing, didn't come out of your mouth by chance. There was some emotional permission that you had to go see your dad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just sitting here in the question. I think it's fascinating. It makes sense to me. And I'm wondering, what's the connection between living our values that the company publishes and talks about and the permission we need to live those values? Like, how much, I guess the real question is, how much is it on us as employees to take responsibility for the values versus ensuring we're okay or we have permission to live our values?
I'm not quite sure I'm totally tracking, but let me maybe give you a Dave Schneider ism, and my team would be smirking right now as I say this. I believe that culture is a two-way street. That is a Dave Schneider trademark line. And culture, if it's just coming from the top, lunchroom posters, our values, et cetera, if it's just coming from the top, to me, it's not real, it's not valued, it's not integrated into the culture, it doesn't inform the behaviors of the culture,
Yeah.
it doesn't inform the experiences of the traditional employee, if you will. And so to me, it needs to be as much bottom up as it is top down. Maybe it's another way to say that. And so the culture is a two-way street is you got to give to get. And I literally talk about my team and our marketing leadership team, anybody will listen to me, so to speak, that you got to give to get. And so what my radar is up on are people who want to take from the culture but not contribute to the culture, maybe is another way of
Yeah.
saying it.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm really sensitive to that. And because the culture will not succeed, it will not flourish if people are not contributing to the culture. And the culture to me it's such a nebulous word, right? I mean, like it's overused in business in many respects.
Sure.
But it gets down to how do we treat one another and how do we interact with one another? And do I have trust in you? Which is a big concept. So my point is like I have a certain expectations with my team that they contribute to the culture, that they participate, that they raise their hands, that they show up, that they're accountable for their work, that they, I mean, all of that to me gets into the gooey mix of how people contribute to the culture rather than us just like, providing this form or whatever. And so, I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but I mean, there is a careful balance between, that culture is a two-way street. We will set up, I believe if we're doing our jobs as leaders, we will set up the form, the expectations, the platforms, the environment for culture to flourish. But if people aren't contributing to it, it will die in the vine for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So your analogy of standing on the shoulders of the people before you, I love. And Allison's still with the company and the past CEO isn't, but I imagine you're still, well, you're standing on the past CEO's shoulders. And at some level, you're standing on Allison's shoulders in that they have imparted the values of the company down to you by challenging you around your daughter and your father, right? They reminded you of what's important. And I'm imagining that has impacted how you show up as a leader. As you begin thinking about the people underneath you and the lives that they're living, I'm curious what impact that had on you as a leader, having been offered the permission that you mentioned earlier.
I don't know if I'm perfect, right? But I try to represent that same value at the end of the day, which is I try to give our people the permission. I try to give our teams the opportunity to ensure that they can contribute in a meaningful way to this company. We spend a lot of time, we all do at work and doing work. And yet at the same time, I think we all recognize that we're doing this work for reasons other than just our own self satisfaction. It's about the paycheck. It's about the opportunity. It's about affording my children certain opportunities because we have the financial means to actually do that kind of stuff. Like just working for the sake of working and getting a big fat paycheck, but not actually knowing how to actually use those resources. What's the point? The point isn't just to accumulate. So I'd like to think that I do that, and so it's little things. And so I will maybe give you a silly little example because to me, it's all in the behaviors, right? Like we can have a very philosophical conversation. It's how the behaviors show up, I think is what's so important. So little things like I will fully admit, I used to be a guy that I work many, many Sunday nights still. I have literally for 35 years. Sunday nights are kind of my night to like get my act together for the following week. I've done it literally forever. I don't even know what it is to like watch a movie on a Sunday night. I don't know what that means. And it's just a couple hours, but it kind of sets the table for the week, if you will. And it would not be uncommon. Old Dave would send a blizzard of 47 emails probably on a Sunday night. And I don't do that anymore. Now I do time delay some emails. I'm not going to lie. So they come out the next morning at 7 a.m.
Okay.
But I am trying to be respectful of the need for people to be able to enjoy their lives and go offline. And I just think it's really important. I mean, this is a part of our lives. It isn't our lives. And that, by the way, honestly, I mean, maybe another silly little Allison example here for a second. I was talking with her once around over the holidays a couple of years ago. I had turned off my Microsoft Teams notices, the IMing capability, because I thought I'm just going to try and enjoy the holiday rather than this dinging thing go off all the time.
Uh huh.
And she looked at me and it was more just casual conversation. And she looked at me and she's like, "Well, why would you ever have it turned on?" Um, she's like, "If people need to find you," she's like, "they can text you or call you. You don't need your IM dinging all day long over the holidays on Christmas Eve, enjoying ham or turkey and having your IM thing go off." And I'm being facetious a little bit. And to be honest with you, Clay, I turned it off and I've never turned it back on. And here we are probably 3 or 4 years later.
Hmm.
And so, I've learned this is therapy. This session is therapy for me. So let me know what the bill is. I've learned how to perhaps be a little bit more measured and balanced, is what I've learned as
Yeah.
I've maybe matured as a person, as a human being, as a leader. So, um,
Well, I mean, I've never met Allison, but I'm just over here thinking you guys are a great partner. Like, If Allison were here, I'm sure I would ask her, hey, how is Dave? What are the biggest contributions Dave is making to the culture? And she would have all kinds of answers. And it would probably be like, what I know about you is you are passionate about results. You're passionate about working, like you care about what you're doing. And that's the other side of your culture that is required for Red Wing to be successful. And it sounds like she's really standing on the mountaintop talking about like, no, 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 we need to take care of ourselves. Also, it seems like there's a really good yin and a yang between the two of you, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that I'm clear on it. Well, on 2 points I would make on that. First off, I think I do have a great relationship with her. I think I do. And hopefully, if she watches this, she would agree.
I
Question
imagine.
mark, exclamation point. That is who she is as an individual, too. So it's not just, it is how she manages our entire leadership team, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point here is that it's not about an individual or two. It's about how do we as a team succeed together.
Yeah.
It's a really important part. So, I mean, I think in a lot of companies you have, lead horses and you have followers, and it's like, and then you get into some political silliness at the top, and the political silliness permeates down into the culture. I'm not going to say we're political free. I don't believe that you can be a political free organization. That may be a whole nother track we could talk about sometime. But I think we're generally like, we try to do what's right. We try to incorporate people's beliefs, et cetera. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just an outsider looking in, but everything I'm hearing makes me think that the balance of working really hard, being passionate about what you do and the results of a company, there's the other side of no, 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 work isn't everything, health, family, all the other things. I'm sensing a really good match and a really good balance, which is really cool. And I have to believe that's what's led this company to be around for 120 years. You mentioned a minute ago, I'm just so curious. Work life balance is like such an interesting, we've already been talking about it without using those words. I don't remember the exact, you said, I don't know if I really believe in work life balance or the words around it. It's really buzzwordy, et cetera. But I'm curious to know what you meant by that because I probably agree, but I want to understand what you mean by that.
Yeah. I think that's a term that came more cliched probably in what the last 20 years or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's probably, you could probably, track that language and that verbiage to when digital technology became more pervasive in business. Unfortunately, I've got enough gray hair, that I can remember when we didn't all have, iPhones connected to our hip and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so there was a natural, if we want to go historical perspective here, there was a natural tendency that when you left the office, you left the office. Like there was no logging in. I mean, I can remember this. I mean, there's none of that stuff. There were, this is pre Blackberries, pre Palm Pilots. I mean, all that kind of stuff. Okay, there's my gray hair kicking in. So when you left the office, you were down and out. Like no one contacted you because there was no way to contact you.
Yeah.
And then as digital technologies have taken over, obviously, they inch their way into every corner of our lives. And there's absolutely value in that productivity and connectedness and all of those values. But it also can absorb you. It can be all consuming if you're not careful. And I think that's
Sure.
obviously what we see with a lot of children today and kids and my own kids, which
Hmm.
is like the screen addiction time and stuff like that. So I think, for me, the work life balance thing is a little bit like I understand what it absolutely represents, and I also think it's a bit of a red herring, which it's would suggest the phrasing would suggest that you're either on or you're off. You're either like, you're either fully on or you're the balance or I'm over here doing this. And to me, I don't think that's the way we work today. The way we work today is truly like, I'm at my kid's soccer game and while they're doing warm-ups because I don't need to watch the 450th round of warm-ups, I might be on my phone checking a thing or two. And then once the game starts, like I am not checking my email because I'm involved with what's going on in the field. And so to me, there's micro moments that allow us to be far more involved, ensuring that we're moving things forward, but at the same time being present in the moment of whatever that moment is. And that takes learning. That does take learning over time because I think the start or stop is probably what it was when we called it work life balance. But I don't think that that's the reality of actually how we actually all the way we actually all behave today. I think that there's more micro moments that allow us to continue to move things forward and more of an
Yeah.
integration philosophy at the end of the day.
Yeah. I think, everything you said, I would agree with. I think having the presence of mind and spending time with intention is sort of the key for me in my life. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. And in fact, I may decide scrolling and looking at cat videos on Instagram. I know it's not productive, but it's exactly what I want to be doing right now. So I'm going to do it fully. I'm going to do it with intention. Like as long as you're not asleep at the wheel and you're choosing your behavior, you're choosing to do whatever it is that you're doing. I think oftentimes the more I do that, I don't know, I venture to, I guess I could say the happier I am as a human being.
Yeah. You speak of purpose and intent there, and, I don't know exactly where exactly this whole conversation is going, but I think that's such a big part of who we are too
Yeah. Oh,
as a
Red Wing
culture
is? Yeah.
at Redwood. Starts for us, it doesn't start, but this is a big part of it, is literally the product we make is made with very much purpose and intent. When I first got to Red Wing, I would hear this phrase purpose built all the time. And I'm like, what are we talking about here? And what I've come to really recognize is how purposeful our product is in its building. Like we're making the majority of our business is building work boots for people in the skilled trades. That's who we make work boots for. We happen to have a heritage line. We happen to have a hunting line of boots, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, like the foundation, the core of the company is really making work boots. Uh, and so not all work environments are the same. Like if you're going to be working on an asphalt concrete environment versus if you're going to be working on an oil rig versus if you're going to be working on a ranch, your requirements of what you want out of your footwear are very different. So we make different lines of footwear based on what your environmental conditions are going to be. And so it's very purposeful. And so that purposefulness really does permeate our culture as well, which is to be purposeful and intentional around what we seek to accomplish, who do we want to accomplish it with, why are we seeking to pursue it. And we really do get into some of those types of conversations, which I think is really important for the success of the company. So I know you're trying to move on from the company here a little bit, but I think it's a really important point of how we value the company. So
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. I mean, again, if you've been around for 120 years
yeah,
and people still love it, it's not like, sometimes people love a brand just because it reminds them of their childhood or whatever. And I'm guessing there is some of that with your brand. There is,
for
what's the
sure.
word? I mean, the heritage, the emotional
Right. Yeah,
side of
we're just-
putting it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the boots are kick-ass. I mean, the shoes are kick-ass shoes. They last forever. They feel great. They do what they're supposed to do. It's not just an emotional, marketing play. Yeah. I do want to talk about the brand. I read something about the brand. I'd love to get your take on this. I don't know if it's true or not. You said I read somewhere that Red Bill, Red Wing built a size 638 and a half boot using 80 hides of leather after someone at Red Wing misunderstood the assignment. Make the brand feel bigger.
I've never heard that version of it. What I
I know I
know is
made up the version, but tell me about this. Tell me about this big boot.
yeah, I mean, it's done before my time. It was done on our 100th anniversary, which we are 120 years old today. So, or this year. So it'd be 20 years ago, I guess. I've been there 12. And it was to celebrate our 100th anniversary, the big 638 and a half size boot. And it was built with extreme love and care by a bunch of people at Red Wing Shoe Company. And then it was literally paraded out into various parades and communities, and small towns, etc. And its final resting place, so to speak, is in our flagship retail store in Red Wing, Minnesota, and it's there today. It's a
That's so
two-story
cool.
boot. Two-story boot. It's our iconic kind of classic mock, is the style of it. And I don't even want to hazard a guess, but there are hundreds of thousands of pictures taken of that every year with people that come into the store, and take a photo with it, and then go about their merry way and shop in the store, so to speak. So it's in the
I
Guinness
love it.
Book of World Records, by the way. And it's a cool kind of emblem. And again, it all predates me, but it's part of the story. So
I love it. I gotta go check this thing out sometime, and I will next time I'm in your neck of the
yeah, for
woods.
sure, for sure.
We've talked a lot about values, and I want to touch on values a little bit more before we move forward. If I'm correct, Red Wings values are respect, integrity, community, and excellence. Did I get
That's
that right?
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
good.
Yes.
And we've already talked about this today. Values aren't you told me this last time, and I absolutely agree. They're not a poster you put in the lunchroom. I've seen this so many times. It's sometimes people chalk this up as a box to check. It's an exercise, but we have to have values. And so they all get together in a room for 30 minutes, come up with values that sound good, and then put a poster on the wall, and that's that. That's not what it is. Values fundamentally can serve as a criteria for the decisions we make. When we're up against a hard decision, let's stop for a minute and remind ourselves who we are and what our values are. How do we want to move forward as an organization? And I do know that there's lots of ways to be successful as a company. I know that there's plenty of fast moving companies, tech companies that have different values. Well, whether they say they have similar values or not, they have different values. They're burning and churning through people, and they're quite successful. Publicly traded companies, they get rewarded by their shareholders, short-term gains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of ways to run a company. And I think what's fun about leading a company is that you get to choose. But I'm curious, what happens when someone within Red Wing gets really great results, but they aren't aligned with the values?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you that first off, that doesn't happen all that often because there is a
Okay.
balance between our values and performance.
Okay.
So it would take a lot to get down that path where all of a sudden there's something to show for it, but terrorize the culture in the meantime, so to speak. So that doesn't typically happen. What I would say is that, just to go back to they're not a poster, if you will, in the lunchroom, is we are expected to not just embrace and talk about, but actually to create behaviors that link off of those values. And so let's use one as an example. We'll use community as an example. And so there's definition around what do we mean around each one of these. So there's specificity. So when we talk about community, what are we talking about? We're talking about the environments in which we play and work. And so we naturally tend to think of Red Wing, Minnesota, which is kind of ground zero for the company. But we also have a big operation in Houston. We've got an operation in Amsterdam. We have an operation in Japan, et cetera. So it's those environments in which we play and work. Our employees play and work. And so if I just continue down that thread for a second, the Red Wing Foundation, as an example, is part of the company, and we do a lot with the Red Wing Foundation to support the community of Red Wing. And so that's everything from the Sheldon Theater, which is an awesome, environment in downtown Red Wing to go see plays and performances, to the Environmental Learning Center, the ELC, which is an organization that encourages people to get outdoors, if you will. So that's something that, again, comes from the top, comes from the Sweezy family. And so they want to ensure that we are respecting the communities and engaged in the communities in which we live and work. And so it's everything from that to we do a national day of service. So all of our employees on the first Monday in May, they work and wherever they work and play, we take a half a day off and we go clean up parks and we help all these nonprofits in our local communities, et cetera. And so my point is there is distinction and definition around what it means when we're talking about that value. And then there are activities and programs and events and things that we are expected to do to drive the right behaviors that link the behaviors to what the value is. If the value is simply just the poster in the lunchroom and there's never any type of behavior that's expected of it, then it's trite and it's superficial and it's a check the box. But when there are actual behaviors that are linked to it, that's where I think you start to see the traction that those values are actually impacting the culture. And that's a really important part is I think is from a leadership point of view, is what are the behaviors that we expect as a result of
Yeah.
whatever the stated efforts are, if you will. You gotta like show me the proof that we're actually doing what we say we're going to do.
So I'd love you guys are, from my vantage point, doing such a great job bringing your values to life. And so many companies struggle with this. I would love for them to learn from you and what you're doing. I'm curious. So the community thing's quite obvious. Hey, we care about community. It's one of our values. We're going to go be in the community and give back and do all the things you just mentioned. The other ones are a little bit less obvious, I think, maybe like integrity. What advice would you give to other CMOs, CEOs, other organizations to ensure that they're actually living the values? And what I mean by that, I'd like to get specific. Like, do these values get discussed in your executive meetings? Like, how do they stay top of mind for people?
Yeah, I think it'd be a fallacy to say let's have a conversation around respect. What does respect? You
Right.
know, I don't know if we have it in that context. What I would say is let's go to the HR, side of this a bit. If I look at our performance reviews, those four values show up in our performance reviews.
Okay.
And so how is the culture of Red Wing? How are you contributing? Respect, integrity, community excellence. It's called RICE, RICE. How does that show up? We as leaders talk about them, yeah, within our larger team formats. We talk about what does respect look like. I wouldn't say we do like a symposium on each one of these. That'd be too dramatic.
Okay.
But it does show up kind of in the little, elements of our culture, the performance reviews, the discussion points, the how are you acting with integrity? When I'm coaching my own people one on one, we will have conversations around our values. But there isn't some big, massive, presentation. And so I think at the end of the day, like values, they can show up in big ways, and the big ways are all the obvious things. To me, how values show up is in the day-to-day behaviors and how you're holding your leaders accountable to those values. Again, it's all behavioral based. I just cannot say that enough in my experience, which is it's one thing to have it said, it's another thing to actually see the behaviors that actually indicate and flag for the rest of the organization. No, this is important to us.
Yeah.
So that's maybe a way it shows up.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I want to move on. I want to talk about you as a leader, some other things. What makes you a good leader? So, you and I met when we were both working for an agency, and you worked for lots of agencies. I've also worked client side, like I worked for IBM and dealt with an agency, and now you're with Red Wing. I don't know. I imagine you're working with agencies. It's different. It's a different culture. Agencies, super fast paced, very competitive, intense, sometimes toxic, and people trying, bringing each other down sometimes doesn't need to be that way, but it's not uncommon. There's lots of gifts and there's lots of liabilities in that culture. And you're a product of that, not that the toxic side of that culture, but agency culture, the good and the bad, right?
Yep, for sure.
So what did agency life train in you that's really valuable, that's most valuable?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I might steal that.
Please.
Well, I don't know if it's one thing for starters. I think that let me try this on. I think first off, again, the need to be consumer centric is one of the things that I've learned over and over again from an agency point of view, which is it is really easy on this side of the fence to get wrapped around the axle on any number of operational issues. How we make the product, where we make the product, margin structure. I mean, you name it. And I had a great conversation with one of our general managers years ago that literally is going to echo in my brain for the rest of my life, which is Dave, sometimes we forget that there are X million of consumers out there wandering around wearing our product. And I'm like, oh my God, like that is so well put. And big shout out to George if he were to ever watch this because it really sunk for me, like how much that is an important lens. And I think that's what I bring to Red Wing. Truly, like, the mosaic of leadership people that are helping run this company. I think one of the things that I help bring here is the consumer lens to our business. And I learned that
Yeah.
from the agency world at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Which is all the operational issues. I mean, if I can be so blunt to say this, none of it matters. None of it matters if you aren't delivering something of value to the consumer, period. Just full hard stop, honestly, because they're not going to buy your product. They'll buy somebody else. The company won't succeed. It will go out of business. I mean, blah, 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 blah. There's so many concerns and factions that exist on this side of the fence. Sometimes we forget a little bit of that. And so I think I bring it from the agency world.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I keep going?
But
Can I keep going or do you want me to stop?
great. No, keep. I was going to ask you about I'll ask you another question when you're done with this question. So keep
Okay.
going.
Okay. This line of speed beats perfection is something I also bring from the agency culture. And that doesn't mean our value around excellence, by the way, is negated here. We do have an ongoing debate at Red Wing about excellence versus speed, because if you try to wait to make something be perfect, the market may have moved. And so I'm a big fan, people know this, of just get something to market. The market will tell you if you're doing it right or not, and what tweaks you need to make and what modifications and incremental decisions you need to make, et cetera. All of that will come. But the notion that the speed beats perfection is literally part of my DNA. Like, let's move fast because, by the way, the world is moving fast. Decisions are being made, consumers are making decisions, et cetera. And so, uh, and yet at the same time, if I can juxtapose this and maybe do a bit of a judo flip on your question, one of the things that I've learned by being on this side of the fence is I don't always necessarily speed. We always don't need to be the first to market on things. There is value in letting somebody else, you know, be first to market, if you will. There's value in letting somebody make the mistakes. There's value in letting somebody else figure a few things out, and then we can move fast behind it, if you will, and be more efficient in so doing. So, but I think maybe I'll stop there. I think the importance of being more consumer centric and speed beats perfection is maybe two things. But honestly, maybe a final comment I would make is I learned a lot from agency life. I loved and adored my time in agency life. I loved working with super smart people, the ability to understand context and perspective and help champion business building ideas, not just ad campaigns, but business building ideas that actually had dramatic impact to businesses and the work that they did. I found great satisfaction out of it. We could have another conversation. Well, then why did you flip to the other side? But I'll stop there for a second. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm very curious about that question, but let's hold for a second because
sorry.
I want to hear about. No, I love it. I want to hear about the other side of the equation here. So, next question: what did agency life potentially overdevelop in you that you had to learn to tame or tamp down to really be effective in the Red Wing culture?
Yeah, I mean, I've already spoken a little bit about it on this call, but the need to be on 24/7.
Okay,
I think
that's
that the
agent. That's
speed
agency learned agency thing. Yeah,
that is definitely learned agency behavior, a little bit about who I am and why I think maybe perhaps I was successful in agency life,
yeah,
is agencies reward speed. Agencies reward, fast thinking and hypothesis driven and execution and go, go, go. Agencies reward that. It's a little bit of, but again, also it's part of who I am at the end of the day. And I think, what I have learned on this side is to perhaps be more measured at times, not all the time. There are still times that you need to move fast because the market is still moving fast. But there's a time, a place to create the time and the place. There's a time and a place to create the time and the place to be able to really think through meaty topics that perhaps have larger ripple effects in the organization at large and how you show up in the marketplace, et cetera. And so that is something that not just but I think other people who I've hired from agency environments, they've had to learn to adopt to. But I think it's healthy, to be honest with you.
yeah. I think so too. There's real strength in both agency side and client side, and if you bring the experience of one to the other, I think that's really valuable,
Yeah.
as evident by you and
Yeah.
what you've done with your team. Okay, so I want to talk about you've talked about the industry, you've talked about moving fast. Here's what was occurring to me thinking about you and this talk we were going to have today. You're responsible for the personality and essence of a 120-year-old brand, an American heritage brand. That in and of itself, I imagine, comes with some pressure, but I'm going to let you speak to that in a minute. But the world is moving fast. There's tech, there's media, people are changing, the construction world is changing, everything is changing around you. What's it like having to maintain the essence and the history and the DNA of this beloved brand that's been around forever while still maintaining relevance? I imagine it's really easy to go too far left or too far right in this. Too innovative, not innovative enough. I imagine that's a real dance that's not easy to handle. How do you manage that?
Yeah, that is, I mean, honestly, Clay, you're asking really good questions today. This is one that is very topical all the time. Is how do we take the best of the past and what we've represented and yet still create the right relevancy for the future? And the funny thing is that whole relevancy concept is something that I locked onto. Literally, I can remember my first presentation at Red Wing Shoe Company. Literally, that relevancy piece is something I spoke about at length within literally the first 6 weeks of being at this company, which is if we lock too much on, I'm going to expand on your point a bit. If we lock too much onto our legacy and our history and our successes of the past, et cetera, then it looks like, and this was literally a line I used to use, it looks like we're just showing the old home movies. And there's value in that because it shows that we're not just showing up, that this isn't our first rodeo, that we've been there, done that. There's value in that. But if you can't turn the corner a bit to tell people why they should give a shit, then what difference does it make? Then you're literally just sitting there watching the old home movies. And so that careful dance between making sure that we're grounded in the past, There are things like our values that we spoke a lot about today that permeate the culture, that represent who we are, the attention to craft in our product, to we're not chasing fast fashion. We literally are not doing that. There are certain things that is who we are, and we want to be that organization and that brand in the marketplace. And yet at the same time, we have to show sparkles of the future so that we're connecting kind of that past and the future and riding that tightrope. And it is a tightrope, because we could go way towards one side and become a fast fashion brand. And then we are literally just like everybody else in the marketplace. Literally everybody else in the marketplace, they're
Yeah.
chasing fashion, they're chasing trends. We're an apparel brand at the end of the day, a footwear and apparel brand. Like, that's easy to fall into that trap. We have no desire to do that.
Yeah.
So it is a constant debate. And so how it shows up from a marketing lens is, yes, it's the brand campaigns, but it also is what what elements of our brand do we lean into that would connotate both sides of that equation. And so I'll give you a
Yeah.
real world example. We lean into, excuse me, our care and repair as an example. So sustainability, as an example, is obviously a major topic today. And the fast fashion world could give two bleeps about, the notion of sustainability. They just literally don't care. It's not part of who
Right.
they are.
Right.
They want you to buy the next sweater, the next pair of jeans, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And the stuff you bought last week is now irrelevant, by the way. And so what we try to really represent is actually the 180 degrees away from that, which is actually our product has longevity. It has durability. We have a repair shop. We literally have a repair shop in Red Wing, Minnesota. You can send your footwear back to us and we will repair it. We will send it back to you. And so there are marketing efforts that we do. I'll use an example of a campaign called Will Your Wings, which is the idea that you actually can bequeath your favorite pair of Red Wings to other people of the next generation. And so it's an awesome campaign we did. I'm smirking because we created tags that go inside the gusset label of the footwear, and you could literally write a note to who you want to bequeath that pair of Red Wings to. So I bequeathed a pair
Cool.
to both of my children have a pair of Red
Wow.
Wings, even though they're young, and they have their names written on them, that to them and from dad, so to speak. And so that notion of that's part of kind of the longevity, the enduring nature of who we are.
Yeah.
Coupled with, yeah, I mean, we are looking at AI, we're looking at metaverse pieces, we're looking at other things to ensure that we stay relevant. But there are certain elements of the brand, of the product, we're not going to mess with the craftsmanship. We're not going to mess with the attention to detail. We believe that our brand at the end of the day is an enabler to the skilled trades. I love this storyline. Is how do we ensure the next generation of people in the skilled trades are given opportunity? And so we use our brand as a tool to help represent some of those cultural issues so that we can stay relevant at the end of the day.
Got it. So I love all that. And again, it speaks to why the brand is as amazing as it is. I love the passing down boots to the next generation. Anyway, we could talk. I'd love to talk with you about this for hours. I could geek out with you about this, but I
No
also
one
could
will
geek
listen.
out.
No one will listen. It'll be you and
No,
I podcast this.
no. Well, speaking of listening, this is Fearful Giants, and it's about how leaders navigate through all this craziness. And that's where I want to really understand what it's like for you to be the guy, the guy. There's no other marketer above you that's responsible for this tightrope walk. Like, I'm imagining that would come with a fair amount of pressure. Is that true? Do you sense a massive responsibility? And is that responsibility a tough thing to carry, or is it not?
I mean, yes, of course I feel a responsibility. And yes, I'm the CMO of this organization. So of course I care about that. But but brand to me is way more than just, marketing, if you will, at the end of the day. Brand is this collection. I mean, I'm going to hopefully give a textbook definition that anybody in the marketing world would agree with. Brand is way more than that. It's a collection of all of it. It's literally how our customer experience teams are answering the phones. It has to do with the service that's provided in our 550 retail stores in North America. It has to do with what happens when you're on our website. It happens to do with how we respond to social media posts. It has to do, I mean, so to me, brand is way bigger than that. And I absolutely think of myself as influencing many of those elements, and yet at the same time, like, the expectation is that the value of the organization, the value of our brands, the value of how we show up in the marketplace is all of our responsibilities. So I absolutely feel a certain onus and a certain responsibility, but by no means do I think it's all mine. And so I can sleep well at night knowing that there is a highly distributed, if I can use that word, a highly distributed responsibility for all of us to be delivering on the values of the brand. Because if it's just a marketing, maybe said differently, if it's just a marketing responsibility, then it is just so if marketing, let me say it differently. If marketing is making promises that the company and the brand can't achieve, then it is just puffery and it's bullshit. Like
Yeah.
that's the last kind of marketing I ever want to be associated with is like making a whole bunch of promises that the organization can't deliver on. And so to me, what's important is that I shudder at the word authenticity because I think it's a way overused, hyped word these days. But there's an authenticity. And what authenticity means to me is it's the connection between your values and your behaviors. And so what I want to see is that that there is authenticity around the marketing, which is a representation of how the brand actually shows up in the marketplace. How do we want to show up? Are we doing the things? Are we consistent? Consistency is a concept we haven't talked about on this call, but I think it's super important. We have to be consistent. And even as individuals, right? Like I, as a leader, am I consistent in how I'm showing up? Am I one way one day and one day another day? That's called schizophrenia, by the way. Like I don't want to be that kind of a leader. I want to be consistent in how I show up. And so to
Yeah.
me, the brand also has to have consistency. So I'm straying far away from your question, but to me, the fundamental nature is, do I feel pressure? Of course I do. Like you can't be in a C-level position and not feel some pressure. If you do, I might suggest you're actually not a great C-level executive, because you are the tip of the spear. It's your responsibility. But in my perspective, it's everybody's responsibility to deliver on the values of the brand.
I mean, I just love that answer. It's funny. I wasn't expecting to hear that answer, but it seems really healthy to me. Just this idea, no one person is responsible for this brand. Of course, no one person is responsible for this brand. It's been around a lot longer than one person, 120 years. It's been around twice as long as you have. So again, I think it speaks to the health of the organization and the culture you built, which is really, really incredible. And I think you're a human being. I think so. You're a human being, right?
Well, ask my kids or my wife. Maybe they
Yeah.
disagree.
Well, let me ask you this. And sometimes I go on little fishing expeditions looking for fear and stuff, which I need to be careful about. And I really believe that, well, you just said a minute ago, if you don't feel some sense of pressure as a C-level executive, maybe you could be doing something else. That we could talk for an hour about that very comment. But the question I have for you is there a tension that you live with that the people around you that you work with would be surprised to hear?
Is there a tension that I live with?
Yeah, like if something were to keep you up at night, like the stress, the pressure, what comes along with the job? You just mentioned if C-level execs aren't feeling something, they're not doing their job. So what is that for you?
Well, I heard two different questions there. The first question I heard, so let me take a swing, and if I'm answering it wrong, you can edit and post. Um,
I can need to edit my questions in post, apparently. But keep
um, what I would say is I don't think I'm a different leader in terms of the pressures I feel day to day and how I show up. I don't think I am different. And
Okay.
what I mean by that is I'm going to go down the route here of transparency and trust.
Okay.
So I believe that I am the same person in my work life, in my personal life, in high intensity meetings as I am in just casual chit chats, as I am on a podcast with you right now. Like I am not a different person. Like I'm kind of who you are is what you get type stuff. And I
Okay.
think that that creates a level of trust with people that work with me. I mean, they can be the judge. I don't try to be something different. And so, if I'm having a particularly frazzled day, like, I mean, yeah, that might show up a little bit. If I'm having a super awesome day, they'll probably show up that way. But I don't try to be something different. I don't think I'm something different based on the environment or the situation. I'm the same person I am, which is I am still as driven. I think of still self-deprecating. I think of myself as being a fun guy to hang out with. I also think of myself as driving to conclusions. And so I don't think I show up differently based on the environment. I know certain people do that. I know it for a fact, and I can name names, right? We know those people. And to me, that inconsistency is what I think violates trust at the end of the day. Because which version am I going to get? Am I going to get the guy that is like this or the guy that's like that or the guy that's valuing this or the guy that's valuing that? So to me, I think if I think about what I'm quote unquote good at, I mean, I try to be consistent because I don't know any other way to be at the end of the day, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like I'm going to go to a meeting here in 15 minutes here. I'm going to be the same way you and I are talking right now. I'm going to be the same way when I go into that room. I'll probably have a funny little story or two, but yet we're going to get down to business at some point in time and we're going to drive forward. I mean, we're going to drive things forward. And so trust is such an important part of kind of who we are as leaders at the end of the day. And again, I like putting definition and distinction to words. So when I'm talking about trust, it's do I know you to perform and deliver on the expectations that we have mutually agreed to? I think that's really important. And so, there's certain people I trust and certain people I don't trust. And it's not that I think they're bad people. It's just the people I trust, like I can tell you right now, I can name them by names. People that I know we're going to have a conversation, we're going to have a discussion. Maybe we're going to agree, maybe we're not going to agree, but we all know like what we're driving towards and what that looks like as a next step. And they're going to
And it,
fulfill their side of the obligation. I'm going to fulfill my side of the obligation. There's other people who I don't know if I trust. Like they
yeah,
haven't proven a consistency over time that they're going to do as they say they're going to do.
yeah. I love that consistency. I think earns trust in me for sure when I think about the people in my life. I guess I'm sitting with the question, if one day I'm carefree and all is well, and then the next day I'm really nervous about something. Like there's a big thing that happened and it's going to affect our business and I got to make a tough call or something. It's going to affect who I am. That would potentially I would look inconsistent from day to day, given my mood, given my headspace, given the level of stress I'm experiencing. I'm not imagining you're equating that with not being trustworthy, or are
No,
you?
no, not necessarily. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't think you would be. Do you share those moments with the people around you? A lot of people keep them close to their chest, and everyone has a different relationship with fear. That's really what this podcast is here to explore. That's what the question was. What would the people be surprised to understand? And maybe they wouldn't. Maybe you are very transparent with them if you're stressed or concerned about a particular thing.
For starters, I think that that's a question that we should ask the people that work for me, right? I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, like,
Cool question to ask them. Yeah.
yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't know how to articulate this. I mean, if I have fears about something, maybe let me take another swing at this. If I have fears about something that's happening in the business, I will share that with them. I will ask for their counsel. We will discuss it together. Sales aren't happening the way we want them to, or I'm very particularly concerned about a particular competitor. Like I'm really pretty open. I mean, I'm pretty transparent around when I'm having fearful thoughts, when I'm having happy thoughts, when I'm proud of our team, when I'm disappointed in our team. And I think that part of my hallmark, I think part of my leadership style is to be super transparent. Like I'm the one that truly, I'm not the only one, but I'm one of the people that I believe is pushing for, the transparency of data, the transparency of how the business is performing. And if people, and there's always a fear, and this isn't just a Red Wing thing to be clear, there's always a fear that people won't be able to absorb that data or they'll take it the wrong way or et cetera. Like my own point of view is then we've got the wrong people. People need to understand that being transparent is actually helpful for their business or helpful for their life to actually understand where we're winning and where we're losing. At the end of the day, this is a bit of a game. It is a game. And so for us to win, we have to understand where we're winning and where we're losing. And that transparency piece is so important. So I
Yeah.
think I'm going off your question, but
No, I think you're answering the question really well, in fact. And here's what I'm interpreting. Here's how I'm interpreting your thoughts. If I were to be in an elevator with someone and they were to ask me about you, I think one of the words I would say is steady. So you can be in an easeful state. You can be in a fearful state, but it seems like you have a really healthy relationship with the fear. Like, well, transparency is my guiding light. I'm just going to share whatever is going on. And I think that is what builds trust is this steadiness and openness. Where some people have an unhealthy relationship with fear where they never admit it because who does that mean I am as a leader or any number of things. This is what I coach people on fairly regularly. Or it comes out the opposite side and there's huge explosions of fear, et cetera, et cetera. That can be unhealthy too. But what I'm inferring in your answer is you just seem to maintain a steadiness across the ups and downs of whatever is happening within your business.
yeah, I mean, I try to, if I'm being a little bit humble here, I'm not to say that I don't have my moments of frustration, et cetera. I'm a human being after all, but I think the notion or the concept of steadiness maybe is true. But again, I want people to know what I know. There's very little value in hoarding information. There's very little value in keeping things too tight to the vest. I mean,
Yeah,
What do we do with that?
yeah.
To me, it's like where the culture meets action is where people understand what's happening and why it's happening and what do we need to do to amplify it, rectify it, correct it. Like that's the value. The value is ensuring that everybody has access to the right information, not all information. Super important distinction there. Not everybody has to know everything, but it is what do you need to know? What do you need to have knowledge about? What do you need to appreciate so that you can be a more effective driver of your space and your efforts and your initiatives.
I love it. I've got like 30 more questions for you, and we're not going to get to those. We'll have to do this some other time because every time you answer, it's like, ooh, this is good. There's another question here. But we can't. I know you've got a meeting here right around the corner. I've got a couple questions and then we're
Yeah.
out of here.
Okay.
And I probably don't have time for this, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I think it's really fun. If that giant boot we talked about, if that giant boot could talk, what would it tell Red Wing never to forget? And you've got 30 seconds to answer that, not a 10-minute
It's
long
easy.
answer.
Don't forget about the craftsmanship of the product. At the end of the day, we are a product centric company. Our values, permeate from there, et cetera. Don't lose the craft. Don't lose the attention to detail. Don't lose the notion that, the purposefulness, building with intent, et cetera. Don't lose
There you have it, folks. And that's why you should go out and buy yourself some Red Wings. Uh,
that. Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, really, I mean, mine are I just love them, and every time I put them on, I love them, and they'll last forever. I'll get them resold whenever I need to get them resold, and anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. If anyone's interested in hearing about my experience with Red Wings, text me.
I am.
Anyway,
I am.
I'd be happy to share. What's next for Dave besides continuing to invite others to stand on your shoulders?
I mean, well, that's just it. I mean, to me, I have a very specific definition as to what leadership is, and that's constituting a future that others can see themselves successful within. I've literally used that definition of leadership for 25 years. And I think that's part of my responsibility is creating the environment where other people can see themselves as contributing uh, to the organization, to the brand, to the business, et cetera. And so what's next for me is continuing to, what I believe is pave that road so that others can see themselves successful within kind of the context of the business that we're in.
Dave, are you hiring? I'm really good at I'm really good at getting coffee. I can like
Doing
I could send your
podcasts,
I could send your emails for you. Seems like
just not on Sunday nights, not on Sunday nights. So
not I'll what do? You set a time to get sent the
yeah,
next day, whatever. Anyway, it's so fun having this conversation with you. I
it
love what
is.
you're up to in the world. I love the relationship you have with this brand and the people. It's just inspiring. I'm lit up hearing you talk about this. So I really appreciate you taking some time and doing this with me. Anything else you want to share before we sign off, or anything you want to pitch, or anything you want to share before we go?
No, honestly, I mean, it's been a pleasure to be with you, Clay. Seriously, we only worked together for a very short period of time, which is the irony of it, right? I mean, I think I was only at the aforementioned agency for 12, 13 months. It was a very short stint, and that's actually what bounced me back to Minneapolis from Chicago, where you and I worked together. But I have great affection for what you've done, and I've followed you, over the years, et cetera. And so, applaud your continued success and all that you're bringing, and in seriousness, like the provocations that you're providing in forums like this are very meaningful. Business is hard today, and the whole notion that it does move fast, it does move fast. But I think if we're not taking a moment as leaders to reflect, understand our fears, understand what motivates us, understand what drives us, if we're not doing that, then I don't know if we're really embracing what it is to be a leader at the end of the day. And so I appreciate that you create these forums and these environments to continue to augment our skills as leaders to ensure that we are providing the best forum for our teams and for our people to succeed and flourish in their own right. Because I think that that's a big part of what we are expected to do and hopefully do. So
Well,
my thank
thank
you to
you.
you.
Well, you're very welcome. I appreciate you sharing all of that. It has been really fun to. It's been a long time, and it's really fun to reconnect and hear all about your journey thus far with Red Wing. The folks listening, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Hopefully, you know Dave a little bit better. Maybe you know me a little bit better. Please follow the show if you're into this kind of stuff, and join me, Clay Stelzer, each week as we stop pretending. We name our fears. We remember what it takes to stand tall as the giants we already are. When leaders get real, they make it safe for others to do the same. So please subscribe or follow wherever you listen to podcasts, share with other leaders, leave a review if you're inclined, and help more people feel what's possible when fear doesn't run the show. Thanks so much.